The Miami Heat are good enough to get to the NBA Finals.
Oh, I heard this. I
And the
heard this. It was
Miami
so
Heat
true.
are bad enough to lose in the first round. What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today, Monday, March 28th. I, of course, am your host, Sean Murphy, and I am joined by, for the second week in a row, this guy, after his first week, decided to come back for
Yes,
more.
sir.
Jeff Iafrate. Jeff, how you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing good. How are you, Sean?
Oh, dude, I'm doing great. There's a lot of basketball to talk about. We had a
Yes,
pretty
sir.
crazy first week, Jeff.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
The
absolutely.
amount of love that people showed. We gained over 125 subscribers just in the past
Beautiful.
week alone. We're at over 2,000 views on YouTube alone for the Ashton interview, which, by the way,
Shout out to Ashton.
real quick, how crazy was that?
Crazy.
And
That
yeah,
that perspective from him, dude, was just crazy. And not to mention that when I posted that, the it factor thing on Twitter, everyone will love that. So I'm like, it's not. That was just one question.
yeah,
Like, imagine if you go and watch the interview, if you haven't already, go watch it. You'll see
yeah.
everyone's questions. It was great. He told a whole
It was
lot
an
of
awesome event, and
interesting things.
there's a lot I learned after the fact that I cannot talk about. That we cannot talk about, Jeff.
Yep,
You know what I'm talking about.
top secret.
Uh-huh. Yep. But what I do know is that you're gonna want to click that subscribe button because there's a lot of crazy coming to this channel. So be sure to
Yes.
subscribe. But Jeff, speaking of crazy, basketball has been nuts over the last couple of weeks. Not just because of the March Madness, but there's been some madness in the NBA. So first of all, coming into today, we are having a historical figure in the fact that we have 4 teams in the Eastern Conference that are all within a half game of each other at the top of the standings. Normally speaking, the standings are decided by now. Like if you look at the
Right.
Western Conference, Phoenix is going to be number 1. Golden State and Memphis is going to be number 2, and Golden State's going to be 3. Like we know that, right?
Right.
But in the East, literally anything can happen because of the last week, the Miami Heat have collapsed.
And the Celtics have also rose. Hey, shout
Yeah,
out to them.
the Celtics have rose, but also the Philadelphia 76ers got to that number 1 seed right now. On top of that, Boston rose, and then we're also looking at, the Brooklyn Nets have won 7 of their last 9. They're 4 above 500, like a
No Ben
team.
Simmons.
Yeah, that team, like, if the play-in tournament were to start today, they no longer would have to play Toronto. Toronto would be in the 6th seed. They would play in Cleveland. So that's important because that would mean that they would have Kyrie Irving and they would be heavily favored in that game. Whereas if they would play Toronto, obviously in Toronto, they still have that vaccine mandate, so he can't play. Otherwise, you can play home or away now. And because of that, the Nets have been rejuvenated. But I really do want to talk specifically on this Miami Heat team because normally,
Yeah.
even though it's only been a 4-game stretch, and I don't like to overreact, the things that we've seen publicly from the most well-run organization in the league, one of the
Yeah.
best head coaches of all time, literally is on the NBA's list of the greatest coaches of all time,
Mhm.
run by another person who is on that list and is a Hall of Famer, and Pat Riley.
Right.
For everything that we've seen publicly over the past week has been insane. And a lot of four losses in a row, 3 of them at home.
And it's bad too. Like
Yeah,
no Joel
yeah.
and no
And
James.
they're ugly losses. They
Yeah.
are ugly losses.
Oh yeah.
Like they got whooped by the Nets the other night. They got whooped by the 76. Like they just and like in a lot of these games, like it is very attainable. But these guys, like it feels like the switch is off. It feels like they don't care anymore. And
Mhm.
so I want to focus specifically on the fight that we saw over the
This was
weekend as
crazy.
well, because it started with Udonis Haslem, who has been in the Miami Heat culture for a long time,
Yeah.
almost 20 years, getting in an altercation with Jimmy Butler. And
Widely
then all of a
respected, by the way.
yeah, and
Widely
all of a sudden
respected.
Spoelstra comes in. But here's the thing: if Udonis Haslem is getting in an altercation with you on the bench, number one, Udonis Haslem, he wants all the smoke. He's going to make sure that
Yes, sir.
whoever's on that court, he's making sure that they're going to be accountable. They're going to be doing whatever it takes because Udonis Haslem, for all intents and purposes, is a coach for this team that is in uniform. That is really what he is, because he brings the culture. He doesn't really play. He's really there to uphold that Miami Heat culture, be that veteran in the
Mhm.
locker room. He doesn't play. So like that's really what he's there for. And that's how respected he is on this franchise, that they literally keep a roster spot because he has to be in that locker room. And if he's getting after the star player on the team like that at home, there's a reason why. And the reason why is because the Miami Heat have not played good defense of late. Right before this timeout, they let up easy buckets of transition, open threes, like open layups. Like there was just,
Mhm.
they weren't getting back on defense. And so Udonis Haslam called them out on it. And then
And I
all of a
think the
sudden,
the last play, by the way, was on Jimmy too, before
yep,
the timeout.
it 100% was. And so then Jimmy Jimmy and Udonis go after it, but then it turns into Eric Spoelstra and Jimmy, and he has to be held back by Markieff Morris. And everyone's looking at Jimmy. Everyone's trying to tell him to calm down. Duncan Robinson looks terrified, and he doesn't want to be anywhere near this situation. Like they are falling apart in front of our eyes. And Jimmy Butler, I think something about his game that I don't think we talk enough about is he might like we talk about, like Draymond Green's admitted that he might be one of the worst, like one of the worst, like unimportant game players. Like he's like one of those players that rises for the occasion, and in like games that don't matter, he just struggles to stay motivated. He's admitted
Mhm.
that. I would wager that Jimmy Butler has become one of the worst players in the league in irrelevant games, because the guy just, first of all, he struggles to pretend to care. He really does. I think once he's gotten to the finals, I think being in the Miami Heat culture, being as confident as they are in their playoff expectations, I do I do think that I almost feel like he has this assumption that they can flip the switch.
Right.
And if there's anything that we've seen in this league, that the champions of late, the champions in general, it starts with playing your best basketball at this point of the season. The Brooklyn Nets are playing their best basketball at this point of the season. The Milwaukee
Absolutely.
Bucks, I would argue, are not. I would argue the Philadelphia 76ers are not. And I would say the Miami Heat sure as hell are not. But Jeff, what did you take away from this altercation? And what exactly about like what's going on? Why is this team falling apart?
Now, I would agree with you with the fact of I'm not going to overreact. I think that's the right
Yeah,
thing to do, especially with the
yeah.
Miami Heat culture. Like it's kind of proven itself, but the Jimmy situation in Udonis Haslam is probably the most interesting because Udonis Haslam gets really, like you said, if he's going to call you out, he's going to call you out. He was not
Mhm.
afraid of Jimmy Butler, but Jimmy Butler's the leading scorer on a team that relies so heavily on him.
He's the
And
franchise guy. He is the
yes,
cornerstone of this team.
yes, and besides him, it's really Tyler Hero. I think he's averaging 21 points. Tyler's right behind him. Like
Yeah,
that's as a was a number one seed in the East. That's your team. So already it's already so fragile at the top, and Jimmy doing what he's doing in turmoil. They're just not playing well. Like they're
right.
not playing. They're not a team. And maybe Jimmy's that type of player. Obviously, everywhere he's went, there's been some sort of turmoil or chaos, and
Mhm.
maybe he thrives under that environment. But right now with Miami, it hasn't really gotten to that point up until now, and you're starting to see it. And if it breaks into Eric Spoelstra, you got an issue.
Can I ask
That's
you a
where the issue.
question? Does he thrive in that environment, or does he create that environment? Because I would argue that Jimmy Butler in a lot
Well,
of those situations, he created the hostility within those locker rooms. There was
and that's
the
probably why, because he tends to just for some reason, like
he and
I don't know if he does better in chaos, so he creates it. Like I don't know his mindset. I
well, and the
really don't.
thing about Jimmy too is, generally speaking, a lot of players will keep it under their sleeve. Like, Kevin Durant and Draymond Green, they didn't talk about what was going on within the Warriors organization until 2 years after they were until Kevin Durant was off the team. Like, it was like,
Right.
all right, we're beyond this point. You're already on a new team. We're just talking about it for the first time, or like the way that they did it. Whereas Jimmy Butler, he will just straight up tell you. Like when at training camp, he was like, "Yeah, I just don't want to be here. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
like, if you don't like me, then trade me." Like,
Just
you know what
calling
I mean?
out Cat publicly, like he did not give a damn.
Yeah, he didn't give a damn at all. And the thing is, in these losses, so and again, not to overreact, they are against superior talent. I like
Yeah.
or at teams that are at their level. Like really the only games like I really think you could argue, like, come on now, like the Knicks game, that was ugly.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
and then which I believe that was the game where the altercation happened. And then there was the Nets game, which obviously in the second quarter that game was over. Like those games in particular were bad. And then there was also the Warriors loss, and then there was the Philly loss as well. So the truth is, like, ever since the All-Star break, they've been dealing with health issues. For the most part, they were playing like pretty well. But like of late, like in the month of March, they just haven't looked impressive, and they're just not turning the corner. And I would just argue that they were already coming in shorthanded, and as far as talent goes compared to other teams, I think what was going to bring them up was their teamwork and their culture and their
And
consistency.
that's
Yeah, and
where the
that's what's
chaos has
crumbling
started.
and that's what's crumbling right now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, absolutely, and that's the problem really with the Miami Heat. Like I said before, they're
Mhm.
so reliant on Jimmy Butler that if there's chaos at the top of the food chain, so to speak, and it's Jimmy Butler,
Yeah.
and there's issues with him and maybe how he's playing defense, whatever the argument started, I'm sure they've moved on to some extent, but you could tell like something's not right in that locker room. I don't know whether it'll get fixed or not. Probably. I mean, there are grown men in there, but Eric
Right.
Spoelstra, I loved how he wasn't afraid to go back at Jimmy. Like you saw it out of his mouth. He's
Mhm.
like, what do you want me to fight you? And then Udonis stepped in. But even that, man, he's throwing the clipboard. He's pissed off. So I think Jimmy has to realize, like, dude, you're wrong. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
how it's going on behind closed doors or if he's, amended those relationships or not. But like you said, for a team that thrives off culture, playing the right way, teamwork, if there's, some sort of turmoil, the equation's not adding up. It
Yeah.
ain't going to work out.
You know who I'm looking to step up in this situation? Kyle Lowry. Like, dude,
Yeah.
you were signed this offseason to a pretty hefty contract, and the reason why you were brought in was because they believed that you were the difference between them being a team that can be a good playoff team and a contender. They brought you in
Yeah.
because they truly believed that in combination with Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson, that was going to be a nucleus that would be good enough to compete for a championship. And let's
Not
be
13
honest,
points. Not
yeah,
13 points a game.
yeah, he's averaging the lowest like average of his entire career since 2012, 2013. So like they're not paying you to play your worst basketball. And you're like, and I understand Kyle Lowry, like he's looking for his teammates. And like if you would be like,
His
oh well,
role, yeah.
you would expect his assists to be up. No, they're about the same. So like it's one of those things where Kyle, like, he's not playing his best basketball. He's 35 years old. Obviously, he's tired. And I would argue, like, father time's undefeated. I think we're starting to, maybe that just wasn't the best contract. But at the same
Right.
time, like, you got to step it up, man. I mean, like at the end of the day, this team is only going to take it as far as only going to go as far as like you're going to help take them, because people like talk about how great Kawhi was in that playoff run for the Toronto Raptors, but Kyle Lowry was instrumental in them winning that championship.
Absolutely.
The charges he would get in key times, the steals he would get, the passes he would make, the buckets he would get. Kyle Lowry is a championship caliber point guard when he's playing his best basketball. And right now, he's just not.
Yeah. He's taking a step back a little bit. And that's the problem.
Mhm.
Like you're getting paid top dollar, at least money at the time. I'm the market at the time, like Lakers, who's going to sign Kyle Lowry? Now he goes to Miami Heat and puts up 13 and it's not good enough, especially on a team where Tyler Hero, like I said, if it's not Jimmy Butler, you're looking at a guy who's in his second year to go off for you, or his third year, excuse
Yeah,
me. So
third
it's
year.
like,
Feels like a second. I mean, the thing is, like,
right.
he literally had like 2 months of an off season between his rookie and sophomore year. People were expecting a huge jump up. He didn't have an off season to work on his game.
Right. That's the problem. And
Yeah.
that's the issue. So we'll see. I mean, Kyle Lowry, for what I expect, like come playoff time, that's where the value shows with Kyle Lowry. I think that's the most important part,
Uh-huh.
postseason. But like you said, like if you're not playing well right now, your teams are supposed to be amping up right now
Yeah,
around this time of the year. But we'll see. I think it's gonna be interesting. But they have a great coach, and that's the
they
biggest
do.
thing. And they have to figure that out. And Eric Spoelstra, I think, will be able to do that.
Yeah. I would anticipate within the next couple of days we're gonna hear a report that they had a team meeting. Because if they
Yeah,
don't have a team meeting right now, I don't know what they're doing, because this needs to stop now. Like they
it,
need to halt this. You are in single digits remaining of games remaining this season. First of all, you want to secure the best seed possible for
mhm.
home court advantage throughout the playoffs. Not only that, but also if you end up second in the conference, there's a good chance that
Cavaliers.
well, not just the Cavaliers, the Brooklyn Nets, because they would play in a playing game, and if Brooklyn wins, they would be the 7th
Oh,
seed. So
true,
they would have to
true.
play the Brooklyn Nets. So get the first seed so you can play whoever's in that second playing game. That's what you want. Because
Yeah,
if you're 2 through 4, you're getting the Cleveland Cavaliers, you're getting the Brooklyn Nets, and more than likely you're getting the Charlotte Hornets. Well, no, you would only get 2, so that's not true. So you would get possibly a pool of those 3 teams. I'm dumb, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, you get the point.
Yeah, you get the point.
It's
Like,
still dangerous waters to be swimming in.
well,
Like
even
it really is.
even if you get the 3rd seed, you get Toronto. And I would argue Toronto right now is probably going to be the most difficult matchup in the first round.
Oh, absolutely.
Like I mean, obviously Brooklyn, but I mean, you know what I mean? Like outside of that, like Toronto is a tough out. They play 7 deep. They play their best players heavy minutes, so they're used to doing that. Scotty Barnes is
tons of long players, man.
yeah,
Length on that team, no doubt.
versatility. Oh my gosh.
They can
And
be
you
able
know,
to
like
switch.
yeah, and like the Pistons are like a very similar team as far as construction and my opinion of like what they're trying to get to, but like the difference
Absolutely.
between us and them is like they make their shots. like
That's the reality. They got better shooting.
They're a good shooting team. They're a good defensive team. They're consistent. They have a great coach, good culture. Yeah, they're going to be a tough out. So, you know, they have time to turn it around, but the signs of late are concerning. And so, because with any other player, I think you could say, okay, well, they'll be fine. They'll get their sense. Like, I'm not worried about Kyle Lowry as far as like how he's going to handle himself. I'm not worried about how Bam Adebayo is going to handle himself.
Right.
I'm worried about how Jimmy Butler is going to respond because we all know that he can mentally check out. We all know he can. In my opinion, I think I think people are like, oh, he just wants to win. He's got that dog in him. But like, I would argue that like mentally in Philly, he didn't sound like he was all in there. As towards the end of like how he thought about the coach. He went out and still balled and did his best, but he clearly didn't believe in the long-term success of that team. Minnesota,
and also just to butt in real quick, sometimes that dog can also create a little bit of chaos. Like that's the problem. Like it's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing.
The dog can bite back.
Facts. That is a very exactly. So that's the problem with Jimmy Butler. With Miami right now, you're seeing it for whatever reason. I'm sure he's mature enough to at least to move past it. But yeah, Miami Heat, man, it's an interesting situation. Like coming into the postseason, you could realistically pick a couple teams at the bottom. The Miami Heat could either, if they're not playing at their best, could lose to. You saw it in the regular season. Now, come playoff time, still it's risky, man. It's risky. It is.
Stephen A. Smith went on television and he made this point, and it is like this speaks to where the Eastern Conference is today. The Miami Heat are good enough to get to the NBA Finals.
Oh, I heard this.
And the Miami Heat are bad enough to lose in the first round. And that is
one of the greatest things that man said.
That is the most accurate thing I have ever heard, because literally, look what this team did the last 2 years. They made it to the finals, and then they lost in the first round, got swept by the champion Milwaukee Bucks. But the thing is that is where they're at. They are in control of their own destiny, because if they're all clicking and they're all bought in, and Jimmy Butler is reinvested into defense and he ramps it up and builds momentum for this Heat team going down the stretch, that's great. But if they don't, they'll be home real quick.
And this is the problem too. Like, they're not a superstar reliant team. Like, it's not like the Nets where they can have chaos and then you have Kyrie and KD closing games for you. Like, this is not if Jimmy Butler is obviously frustrated with whatever, there's obviously something not clicking within on the court, off the court, whatever it is. then they're easily, it's easier for them. Like Stephen A said, you lose in the first round, or you could, or good enough if everything's clicking to get to the finals. Like it's not like the Nets were, or even the Bucks where Giannis can bail them. It's different. It really is.
They really rely on all of their pieces firing on all cylinders.
100%.
It is supposed to be that like 03-04 Piston style philosophy where it's not one superstar, it's a team of collective stars that are building towards something bigger. But the problem is that that relies on a strong foundation. And right now that foundation is shaking. And that's something to be of concern. And another thing too, real quick before we end this video, have you watched Victor Oladipo since he's been back? Because man, is he underwhelming. Like, and I understand he's just getting back from injury, but like, I would argue the past couple of years, Victor Oladipo
has all been underwhelming. Yeah, I was gonna say, not just recently, Sean. It's been underwhelming the last couple of years.
Like he had that one year, and everyone was like, Victor Oladipo's a star now. Like
in Indiana, it was my God.
Yeah, but can we just say that was like that was an anomaly? Because the rest of his career has just been disappointing. Like he had a 6-pack one time, then he did great, then he tore his ACL, then he wasn't great.
Like guys, Tyreek Evans won Rookie of the Year. Like, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like things happen. Andrew Wiggins won Rookie. Things happen. All right, it is how it is. Victor Oladipo, man, I wish him nothing, but at least now when he joined the Miami Heat, I always find myself having higher expectations for Victor Oladipo, and then sometimes I'm just like, hey, sometimes with all the injuries and everything, players just for whatever reason, maybe it's a mental thing or a physical thing. You just can't get back to that form.
You can't. Well, can I just point out, first of all, he's 29 years old, so he's not exactly a super young guy anymore.
Like maybe it is mental.
Yeah, well, it's also partially physical because the aging process can be accelerated by injuries, and he's almost 30 years old. Like he's, what I mean?
That kneecap injury was god awful.
Yeah, 100%. And listen, like I know it's only 6 games. You don't really look at trends until it's like 10, but like he's almost playing 20 minutes a game, and he's averaging 6 points, 37% from the field, 25% from 3. Like at a certain point, it's like, all right, well, if that's what you've done, 66% from the field, like from the free throw line. It's like, all right, if you're not even getting the gimme stuff, then what are you giving me? Because it's not
you're a decoy.
You're not going out there giving us flashes of athleticism. It's like when D Wade, when he lost his athleticism, I think people don't talk about, like, he adapted and like he actually
shot got better.
Yeah, his shot got better. He was more of an isolation scorer. Like he really didn't rely on the athleticism. He was more of a role player and did it well. And
shooting from deep. That's what I love about D Wade.
Yeah, and that's what Victor Oladipo has to do if this team wants to get better. So
and I always say, like, what are you when shots aren't falling? That's like I always say that on the show, and Victor Oladipo is another reason. What are you when shots aren't falling? As of late, not a lot. I mean, at least defensively, he's not bringing you what he was. Offensively, it doesn't look like he's bringing you what he was. And like you said, are you facilitating? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Hopefully they can figure it out. Miami Heat are a fun team to watch, but like you said, we'll see. They got to be clicking on all cylinders. It's easier said than done.
100%. Yeah, Jeff, we'll go more into the Eastern Conference on the podcast, which will be releasing this Wednesday. But I do want to ask you real quick before we leave: is there a team of that 4 that you do like the most right now?
Well, clearly out of the East, come on, Nets.
Yeah.
Like I just want to say this too. Like the Bucks, they did beat the Nets last year, but people forget KD's foot was on that line, baby.
Well, and also
injuries to James Harden in that series, stuff like that. So I listen, if they're healthy, the whole James thing's taken care of. There's no as much. If Kyrie's playing every single game, man, give me KD and Kyrie with at least Ben Simmons could stay out.
They have a shell of himself, Serge Ibaka, and a shell of himself, Brook Lopez. Both in years 12 and 13. They're both relying on them to go out and be great big men for them in the postseason.
Yeah.
Honestly, the only good big man they have on this team is Giannis, and that's a problem. Bobby Portis maybe, but like even then, like he's fine. Like I think he's a great story from one year. I don't think he's going to be this like playoff transcending player every single season.
Right.
That's just my opinion.
And they're going to need Drew Holiday to step up, stuff like that. So we'll see. It'll be interesting.
But more importantly, what do you think? Let us know what you think about the Miami Heat in the comment section down below. Do you think that Jimmy Butler will turn this around? Do you think the Miami Heat will make it to the conference finals? Where do you think they'll end up? That we do want to know. Be sure to watch that Ashton, the trainer interview. Yes. Be sure to follow Jeff on Twitter at Jeff Iafrate. Be sure to check out his channel in the link in the description down below. And also be sure to subscribe to From Half Court. We want to thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you next time from Half Court. Be sure to subscribe.